Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, The Acclaimed Guide to Stress, Stress-Related Diseases, and Coping by Robert M. Sapolsky explains how stress affects the body and why modern humans suffer from its consequences more than animals. The author, a neurobiologist and primatologist, shows that stress in zebras occurs only at the moment of a real threat. For example, a lion attack, while in humans, it's due to constant worries about work, finances, or relationships. This leads to chronic diseases, ulcers, depression, and heart disease. Interestingly, Sapolsky wrote the book based on his research on baboons in Africa. He studied how social status affects stress levels in primates. These observations helped him explain why human stress is often related not to physical threat, but to psychological factors. The book became a bestseller because it combines scientific depth with vivid examples and humor. Part 1. The Fundamentals of Stress. Rule 1. Why zebras don't get ulcers. In animals, stress occurs only at the moment of a real physical threat and quickly passes, while in humans, it becomes chronic due to constant psychological worries. The difference is that a zebra after a lion attack either dies or completely relaxes, but a person continues to worry about work even in safety. Example: a manager who is nervous for weeks about possible termination subjects their body to the same stress as if they were actually fighting for their life. This leads to elevated blood pressure and hormonal disturbances. Our body is not adapted to prolonged psychological stress, which makes it more dangerous than short-term physical threats. Rule 2. Fight, flight, and freeze. In response to stress, the body activates three main reactions: fight, flight, or freeze. These mechanisms are useful for survival in the wild, but become destructive when triggered by abstract threats like debt or social pressure. Example: a student before an exam experiences the same physiological reactions, rapid heartbeat, sweating, as a primitive human running from a predator, but cannot run away or fight the threat. Modern stress is often useless because it does not lead to real action, but only wears out the body. Rule 3. Stress and disease. The connection. Chronic stress is directly linked to the development of ulcers, cardiovascular diseases, and weakening of the immune system. The hormone cortisol, useful in the short term, destroys the body with constant exposure. Example: bus drivers working under constant stress traffic schedule have stomach ulcers 3 times more often than people in calmer professions. Stress is not just discomfort, but a direct path to serious diseases. Rule 4. Stress and the digestive system. The digestive system is the first to suffer from chronic stress. In a state of anxiety, the body redirects resources from digestion to muscles and the brain, leading to gastritis, irritable bowel syndrome, and other disorders. Many people experience nausea or diarrhea during severe stress. This is a consequence of shutting down normal digestion in favor of the fight or flight reaction. Gastrointestinal problems are often not the cause, but the consequence of a psychological state. Overall conclusion for part 1. The first part of the book shows that modern humans pay a high price for the ability to worry constantly. Our body is not evolutionarily adapted to chronic psychological stress, which makes it more dangerous than short-term physical threats. The key idea: many diseases of civilization, from ulcers to hypertension, are a consequence of our reacting to abstract threats the same way our ancestors reacted to real danger. Understanding this mechanism is the first step toward conscious stress management. Part 2. Stress and the body. Rule 5. The immune system under attack. Chronic stress suppresses the immune system, making the body vulnerable to infections and slowing healing. Cortisol reduces lymphocyte activity, and constant inflammation increases the risk of autoimmune diseases. After 2 weeks of severe stress, the likelihood of catching a cold increases threefold. Example: students get sick more often during exam sessions. Stress from exams reduces the production of antibodies even after a flu shot. Doctors call this the exam-induced immunodeficiency effect. Your immune system is the first victim of prolonged worries. Rule 6, stress and pain. Stress amplifies pain sensations through two mechanisms: muscle tension and a reduced pain threshold. Chronic pain in the neck or back is often caused not by injury, but by accumulated stress. At the same time, stress itself triggers the release of natural painkillers, creating a vicious cycle of dependence. Example: an office worker with tension in the shoulders after a workday feels real pain. Although there is no injury, these are the consequences of an 8-hour stress-induced muscle spasm. Pain relievers are often powerless if the stress-related cause is not eliminated. Rule 7, memory and aging. Cortisol damages neurons in the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory. In people with chronic stress, the volume of the hippocampus can decrease by 10 to 15%, accelerating age-related decline in cognitive functions. Simultaneously, stress activates the amygdala, intensifying the fixation on negative memories. Example: people who spent a year caring for a seriously ill relative show memory impairment equivalent to 4 to 5 years of natural aging. Stress literally steals your memories and years of clear thinking. Rule 8, depression and anxiety. Prolonged stress disrupts the balance of serotonin and dopamine, creating a biological basis for depression. People with a genetic predisposition are especially vulnerable. Even moderate stress can trigger a depressive episode in them. Anxiety is maintained by the constant activation of the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis. Example: after losing a job, a person with a family history of depression has a 5 times higher risk of a severe episode than others' stress turns on dormant genetic risks. Depression is not just a bad mood, but a physiological consequence of an emotional regulation system worn out by stress. Overall conclusion for part 2. The second part of the book reveals how stress methodically destroys the body, from the immune system to the brain. The most important discovery: these changes are not temporary, but cumulative. Every episode of stress leaves a trace, like a grain of sand in an hourglass. Until chronic diseases develop, it is especially alarming that stress literally reprograms gene function, affecting even lifespan. But there's also good news. Understanding these mechanisms provides keys to protection. Regular sleep, physical activity, and relaxation methods can reverse some of the damage. The main lesson: your body pays a high price for every unreleased worry. Part 3, stress management. Rule 9, personality and stress. Different personality types react differently to stress. People with high levels of hostility and perfectionism are more likely to suffer from cardiovascular diseases, while optimists show better stress resistance. Interestingly, some traits can be changed through conscious practice. Example: a doctor working under time pressure but viewing it as a challenge experiences less stress than a colleague who sees the same workload as a threat. Your perception of stress is more important than its objective intensity. Rule 10, ways to reduce stress. Physical activity is a natural antidote to stress, as it metabolizes excess stress hormones. Even a 30-minute walk reduces cortisol levels by 15 to 20%. Meditation and breathing practices switch the body from fight or flight mode to a state of calm. Example: employees of IT companies who practice 10-minute meditations during their lunch break are 27% less likely to take sick leave due to stress-related disorders. The best methods for fighting stress are free and accessible to everyone. Rule 11, the psychology of control. A sense of control over the situation is a powerful buffer against stress. Even the illusion of choice reduces the level of anxiety. It is important to distinguish between controllable and uncontrollable aspects of a situation, concentrating on the former. Example: patients who are allowed to choose the time of taking medication show better recovery, even if the choice does not affect the treatment. Stress is not so much external circumstances as a feeling of helplessness. Rule 12, social ties and stress. Support from loved ones reduces the physiological consequences of stress. Hugs and other forms of tactile contact stimulate the production of oxytocin, a natural anti-stress hormone. Loneliness, on the other hand, increases inflammatory processes in the body. Example, widowers who maintain active social contacts have 17% lower levels of inflammatory markers than isolated people. Conclusion, quality relationships are the best medicine for stress. Overall conclusion for part 3, the third part of the book offers practical tools for stress management based on a deep understanding of its mechanisms. The main paradox, the most effective methods, physical activity, social support, sense of control, are simultaneously simple and difficult to implement in the modern world. The key discovery, we cannot avoid stressors, but it is within our power to change our reaction to them through conscious practices and restructuring our lifestyle. It is important to remember that stress management is not a one-time event, but a lifestyle that requires regular practice. As the book shows, an investment in stress resistance today is an investment in health and quality of life tomorrow. Part 4, stress and society. Rule 13, stress in the modern world. The modern pace of life creates chronic stress that is becoming the new normal. Technology, intended to make life easier, actually increases stress due to constant availability and information overload. The urban environment with its noise and overcrowding activates ancient anxiety mechanisms. Example, constant smartphone notifications keep the body in a state of chronic readiness, leading to elevated cortisol levels even during rest. Progress has created new forms of stress that our body is not evolutionarily ready for. Rule 14, children and stress. A child's body is especially vulnerable to stress, which can affect brain development and lay the foundation for future diseases. Toxic stress in childhood, violence, poverty, neglect, changes brain structure and the hormonal system, increasing the risk of mental disorders in adulthood. Example, children who have experienced parental divorce are twice as likely to develop anxiety disorders, even if the external situation seems favorable. Childhood experiences leave biological traces for life. Rule 15, aging and stress. Chronic stress accelerates aging processes at the cellular level, shortening telomeres, the protective caps at the ends of chromosomes. People with high levels of stress are biologically 9 to 17 years older than their chronological age. At the same time, stress management methods can slow this process. Example, mothers caring for seriously ill children showed telomere shortening equivalent to 10 years of premature aging. Stress does not just worsen the quality of life, it literally steals years. Overall conclusion for part 4. The concluding part of the book shows how stress permeates all spheres of modern society, creating a vicious cycle. Data on the impact of stress on children and the aging process is particularly alarming. It turns out that we can pass on the consequences of stress to the next generation and literally accelerate our own biological clocks. However, there is also hope in this. By understanding these mechanisms, we can create a healthier environment for ourselves and our children. The main lesson of part 4, stress is not a personal problem, but a social challenge that requires systemic solutions at the societal level, but begins with the personal changes of each individual. This is such a wonderful book. I have compiled a separate list of all the important theses from this book, along with all the techniques and tools, and created a step-by-step action plan that you can immediately implement in your life. You can get all this in my community, Place of Power. There, you will find a detailed text analysis with similar lists for each book being reviewed. The community has already thoroughly analyzed and made available to you hundreds of world bestsellers with a new analysis released every day. Follow the link in the description and use it